No, I didn't know what it meant either. You know,
Well,
I mean, so imagine, my surprise. I open up the mailbox and there it is.
yeah.
Oh crap! Go ahead. Hi.
And that's why you can't return used lipstick that you buy over the mail. No, I was talking to Mark. Saying, to be fair to Mark, so I don't toss him under the railroad track. Well, over the railroad track prior to the train coming down the frickin' lane. Um, we're talking about chapstick, and even this is questionable back in the '80s for people that. Anyways, whatever. Um, welcome
Dude,
all.
you do you. If you want to put on cherry lip gloss, you go right on ahead.
Oh, you see, I removed you from the. I used a clever
Mhm.
twist of words to drop your butt into the hot chair. I rescued you because I said no, I can't do that, and then you decided to say, yeah,
Yes,
well, we're just gonna go ahead and toss your
that's
ass.
what you do. That's what you get for dropping me in there in the first place. But that's okay.
Oh, I see. So the
It's
now
all good.
all of them out there might be thinking, well, these two are incorrigible.
You know what? Let them. Let them. The right people will get it. See, I never ask who gets the joke because I figure the right people will get the joke. And if
Yeah.
you don't get it, maybe you're not supposed to.
Well, welcome to the Trampled Underfoot podcast show, ladies and gentlemen. These are your hosts, Mark Lindsay and Eloy Escajedo. And we go live every Tuesday at 9:30 Eastern, 6:30 Pacific Coast time, 9:30 West Coast time, 6. Wait, is it? Did I do it right the first time?
You had it right the first time, yeah.
Okay, the first time was right. And what's going on, Mark?
Oh, it's been a week. I don't know. It's only Tuesday, but it's kind of, I don't know. They're all running together now. Usually I take Sundays off, but I've had a project in the works that I've been, kind of fixated on getting finished. So I didn't take Sunday off, most of Sunday off. And so it's been a long one, but it's working and things are coming together. I'm happy. I know it. I clap to my hands. And what's going on in Florida?
It's very muggy.
Yeah.
It's very, very muggy. It's been muggy. Um, and yeah, it's been all right. I do have something to share right out the gates.
Okay.
We could do that now, yeah, and just get it.
Yeah, that's fine.
So I created a little slideshow to present the story with the connection. So I'll just say, um, I discovered some things genealogy wise, and while I was doing that, and it was a big breakthrough for me. But while I was doing that, I mentioned it to a cousin of mine in Spain, and that is from there, that lives there, and he added some extra information about the place where these ancestors of mine are from in that area that I wasn't aware of, and it happens to do with festivals or strange festivals. And so I hit up Mark and asked him about this and said, well, the topic of festivals and this and that, but I connected it because of that I'm saying. I connected it
Okay.
because I was doing my own research, and then he offered that information. I said, oh, wow, well, this could be a way of me presenting the thing that I discovered
Mhm.
genealogy wise, plus inserting this festival concept, and which is there's some slight interesting things in it. So what do you think?
Okay. Yeah, I'm all for it. I'm all for it. I like that kind of thing to see what people celebrate and maybe the backstory of it, why they decided to do this and how it all came about and how was it morphed over time.
Okay, all right, so what I will do is I will share the screen.
Okay.
I'll be brief with it just so you can have an idea of the story. And I did do a little slideshow so you can see some of the imagery.
Okay.
So I'll tell the story as best I can here. So in the north of Spain, right up here where this dot is at, in a little town called, well, it's an area, it's a valley. So the valley is called Molledo, and
Uh-huh.
there's a specific. Oh well, I closed that out, which I didn't want to do. And there's a specific village, which is this one here, which is called San Martin de Quevedo, Saint
Uh-huh.
Martin of Quevedo.
Okay.
And in this town, I have many ancestors,
Okay.
direct ancestors. And what happens is that for the past 5 years, I've been searching, trying to locate my two, well, yeah, both of my two great grandparents on my paternal grandfather's maternal side that were from, or at least she was from this village. And I found her information a few years ago, but I've been missing my great grandfather, my second great grandfather for 5 years,
Okay.
searching all up and down family search. And then yesterday evening, late evening, I found their wedding certificate.
Oh, wow.
And this is the actual wedding certificate. I added all the information. So it was Santiago Valle Martinez and Maria Ventura Fernandez Bustamante. They were wed in San Martin de Quevedo on the 14th of October, 1878.
Wow.
And I even got out of this document, as Catholic documents do, the fathers. So I even gained an extra pair of third great grandparents,
Oh, sweet.
which Santiago's parents were Bernabe Valle and Manuela Martinez. They were living in Camargo, where literally today my family is from up there. But originally, back in the day, they were just neighbors, vecinos, neighbors, and they lived originally in this town. So that's how come these two married, and my grandfather came from there. So these names, I don't know if you can see, this is Santiago.
Yes.
This is his father, Bernabe, Manuela, his mother, and then instead of with a V, they wrote it with a B, but this is Ventura Fernandez Bustamante, and her parents, which I already had, which is Antonio Fernandez Bustamante and Manuela Terran Munoz. So this document represents my grandfather's grandparents on his mother's side.
Wow.
That's how far back this is, 1878. Anyways, this is the town. Just to look at the town, this is the church, original church. I don't know how old it is, but it's ancient, medieval or whatnot. It's a very small town with maybe under 30 buildings in all.
Yeah. Yeah, it didn't look very big by the aerial view of it.
It's not very big, and it's up in the mountains. It does snow there during the winter sufficiently, where, so just a good point to make, it has seasonal variations. And this is true for Cantabria and much of the north of Spain. But look at the left, you see how the interior looks. And I just added this because it's one of their hotels.
Oh, wow.
Or maybe it's just their only hotel, better said. But this is a renovated big house where people used to live and turned into a hotel.
Nice.
And this is another view of the hotel here, like some sort of study / lounge. And you can see the wooden beams. And this is the area outside.
I find it kind of funny that they have a portrait of the Leaning Tower of Pisa hanging on the wall in the background there.
Oh, yeah.
An Italian landmark in that setting. That's kind of strange, but it's...
Well, it's a hotel.
That's cool. Yeah, well, understood. But I mean, that's cool.
So you can see the window encased in whatnot.
In the arch, yeah.
Yeah.
Limestone block. Yeah.
And it's got, the beam and here's the outside.
Sure.
And I do want to say, you I have mentioned this before, but just with I have no idea why, but Spain did control Italy.
Yeah.
For hundreds and hundreds of years. So who knows what the story is? And we're talking hundreds and hundreds. Who knows what the story is? But I think this is more to do with giving some sort of vibe to the room. But that's a good
I think you're right about that. It was kind of the juxtaposition. That would be kind of like checking into a nice hotel here and finding a big portrait of the Great Wall of China. It's just like, well, where did that come from? Not that it's out of place. It's just, wow, that's unexpected.
Yeah, who knows why? But there is there's hundreds of years of close association historically, and it's who knows. Yep. But anyways, this is the hotel, and I added the pictures to the slideshow just to give an idea of the slideshow. So again, we have the outside view, and you can see one of the bedrooms off to the left.
Yeah.
And we have the church that I'm showing here, which is no longer in use, I don't think.
Yeah.
But this is the town where countless of my ancestors, beginning with those two that I showed you from the wedding, my second great grandparents,
Right.
their
Right.
ancestry
Okay.
unraveled in that little town.
Okay.
So that's some serious stuff. Well, anyways, talking to my cousin, and I mentioned that I discovered this. He said, "Well, did you know that there's a very old festival that is today held in that valley, and not much anywhere else anymore?" And I said, "No, well, tell me about it." And he told me about it, and that's what sprang to mind, to show you this next thing, and maybe we could talk of
Okay.
some curiosities about, what do you call, festivals or strange or different. So this festival is this one here, and it's called La Vijanera, which is a pre-Roman festival in Cantabria, Spain.
Okay.
And the first, and I'll just read off, the first carnival of the year in Europe is a colorful masquerade involving approximately 60 characters, all male. The madam, the young man, people dressed as nature, like those guys with the leaves you see on there,
Okay. Yeah.
the bear and its owner, the countryman, the gentleman, and then two people, Peppa or Pepona, the doctor, the tamer, the Hungarian. Notice that the Hungarian, the old man and the old woman, and they're all dressed in colorfully, and they all have their own symbolisms. And what it is going back to pre-Roman times, a lot of the folklore that occurred, like the folklore of gypsy, or forgive me, pixies, and all these things.
Yeah. And fairies and what have you. Yeah.
Right. These things, contrary to what we would assume here in the United States, and I can speak to that. Although some people would have a better thought, but people think of these fairies and these fairy tales starting in places like Ireland and such.
Mhm.
Just leprechauns and whatnot, but there were legends and tales all over, and they kind of blend in many cases, like
Yeah.
wooden trees that become alive and all these things. 'Cause we're talking ancient, so this sort of ritual slash festival is a representation of the pre-Roman people that were in Cantabria, which were basically Celtic Iberian type people,
Mhm.
or not type. They were Celtic Iberian. That's basically what they were, and they had beliefs in things that were similar to what do you call these people in England, the Druids and
Mhm.
such.
Well,
They
they
had
were pagan, pagan religions and beliefs.
pagan religions and beliefs. So
Mhm.
they do this to this day. And the last thing I'll say, and then we'll end this thing. The last thing I'll say, let me just bring it a little closer, is that during the mid or early part of the 20th century, festivals such as this were stopped due to the fascist regime that controlled
Mhm.
Spain. They would have none of it and put an end to it. And in prior centuries, like the 1700s and 1800s, during the Inquisition era, things like this were looked down upon terribly, and so
Mhm.
they also had huge problems. And they did reports, like the Inquisition would go around and try to keep everything as
Yeah.
Christianized and Catholic as possible. And they found any leaks, they would report on it, and they were good at doing all that. So there's accounts of this going back in time, but they don't really know how far back the practice goes. But they're basically celebrating the Iberian people that were eventually taken control by the Romans, and they control the Romans took control of them, and that's why we became Romanized, and that's why we became Spanish speakers, and that's why we became, because we integrated with the Romans, which happened to be Italian, um, and that's how we became what we became. But the original people that lived there were, you know like
Yeah.
this type of legends they had in their stories, and
Now, um,
that's basically it.
they do so they do know and they do remember what the festival was all about, its meaning and its roots, correct?
Come again? Forgive me.
Okay, so I guess it's not really a question. It is kind of a question. The people there who celebrate and who organize this, they are aware of the roots and the reason for the celebration, right?
Yeah, yeah,
Okay. Was
yeah.
this an homage to the quote unquote to the gods, or was this um, some other reason for actually beginning the celebration?
So, just to answer your question in a little bit of a longer way, but it's going to have the same result. But it's important to say, last night I discovered my second great grandparents' document.
Mhm.
In the morning, I had messaged my cousin in Spain and told him, "Look, I finally found it," and he was happy and stuff. And he said, "But did you know?" And when he said, "Did you know about the festival?" I went and looked for it, but I did
Uh,
not have enough time
okay.
to delve in further than what I showed you.
So this is brand new.
This is like today.
I
And then I
mean,
thought to myself, oh, festivals, that might be an interesting or sort of traditions or festivals. And so I said, I can A, share my little story, and B, introduce this concept of festivals in one hit and see what comes of it.
well, the reason I mentioned that, the reason, and Jamie Page just helped you out here a little bit, Eloy. He said he just Googled that church and they estimate to be around the 12th century.
Okay.
So, yeah, for it to be standing and that intact is, well, it indicates that it was cared for up until fairly recent times.
It's a
You know,
small village. My Just to wrap up this thing, I mean, neither here nor there, but I just want to mention it because my second great grandparents, the thing is that when my grandfather was born, they're written in his birth certificate, which I've always
mhm,
had.
mhm.
The only place his name occurs is in that birth certificate, missing his second last name.
Uh-huh.
Because what happens with the Catholics is that they name your parents with both their names. So, like, let's say Mark Lindsay and your mother's maternal name is
Mhm.
included with your name, and the same with, like, let's say you and Linda, they would give both Linda's name. Like, let's say in a marriage certificate, they would give both Linda's and both of your surnames, and then they would give your father and your mother a full name, and likewise. Forgive me, or let's say that's true, but it's more likened to this: a child is born. In the document, they give both his father and mother's both names,
Okay.
and all four of their grandparents' names.
Okay.
My grandfather had a similar thing from 1911,
Right.
but they stopped at his first and second name
Mhm.
because by that time they were passed away, and they probably didn't even know, because we're talking about little villages.
Yeah.
And so, oh, do you know your full name? No, his name was Santiago Valle, and instead of saying the specific town, they just
Mhm.
mentioned the valley. So
Yeah.
now you have many little towns in the valley. Where was he from? And so they mentioned the valley, and I was scratching my head for 5 years.
Well,
Anyways, um, to answer your wait, was there an no? I said okay. So roughly, it's been an odyssey, is what I'm
mhm.
saying.
Well, we had something similar here with the birth of my great grandfather, because they they were born at home. They weren't born in hospitals. That is a relatively recent thing. And so when that you ask, well, where was he born? Um, Missouri Flat. That is an area within the county that's not incorporated. It's just a flat spot. And they called it Missouri Flat, that nobody calls it that anymore. So when you say, well, yeah, Missouri Flat in Josephine County, nobody knows where the hell you're talking about. That could be anywhere because there's no place referred to by that name anymore. So that may be why it was just that valley, because they don't know where he was born. He was born at home. It wasn't in a village.
No, well, what happens is, yeah, well, what happened? We don't know. So
Yeah.
I only have their marriage. So all I know is that in there it says they are current. Santiago's parents and him, I would assume, they don't say in that document, but they mention his parents, Burnaby and Manuela. They say they are neighbors of this other town, which is where now all of us recently, within the last 100 years,
Okay.
have been. They're neighbors of this town, but they said, but originally they were from that little town that I just showed you.
Okay.
But does that mean, and I don't know if this is true, does that mean that, okay, they were born there? Or does that mean that, I know on Ventura's side, his wife, Santiago's wife, they've been there going back to the 1600s, because I have been able to trace her with documents just like that on Family Search, which is insanity.
Yeah.
I have been able to go to the 1600s, name after name, going, and it's taken me 5 years. But for him, I don't know. And what I was going to say is that in my grandfather's document, in this new town that he was born in, where we all know that we are from recently, or ancestrally.
Yeah.
By the time he's born, his grandparents had died, and who knows if when they registered his birth and they took him to the priest to do the thing, who knows if when they asked them, they said, well, yeah, his name was Santiago Valle, and they're from that area, but since they had moved so long ago, they don't know exactly, and so they just wrote the general thing. So it could have been something like that. It's not like they went investigating.
Yeah.
For the family, they just said, "Where's your grandparents from?" Or I'm sorry, where is your? And they'd say, "Oh, well, mine is from here," and so they'd solve it that way. But it was better than nothing.
Yeah,
it helped me a little bit.
Well, it's breaking down the brick walls. It's breaking down the brick walls. So, I mean, any information is good information, and especially if you can document it and it's provable, then you've made a huge advance.
Yeah, so, Ventura,
and all this happened last night. Yeah,
this all happened last night. Yeah, Ventura, like Ace Ventura. Yeah, exactly like that.
Yeah. So
no, literally.
Jim Carrey is your cousin then.
he might as well be.
Yeah, really. Well, the reason I asked you about the festival and if they remember the meaning and the purpose for celebrating it is because we have a lot of festivals here that are still celebrated and everything, but I don't think people realize or understand why we do them. We just have always done it.
Yeah.
And, here locally, we have the Pear Blossom Festival. And what that was for was a springtime festival with parades and all this, and Miss Pear Blossom and all this other good stuff. And that was basically a celebration of we made it through winter. The pear trees, which were a huge part of our economy here, they had all bloomed and survived, and no frost came along and killed. We were going to have a good crop. Well, that's pretty much gone. And nobody really knows why we celebrate a pear blossom festival, because you can count the number of pear orchards around here now on one hand, where it used to be every flat spot you could plant a tree had pears.
Yeah.
So it kind of is nice to see people knowing the reason for celebrating it, other than, well, I don't know, we've always done it.
Well, these people and remember, it's not like I live there. I'm literally the son of the son of the guy that was born there, my grandfather. And we're talking about his mother's parents. So my grandfather's grandparents, and we're going back, and it's not that far.
1878. Yeah.
That's when they were married. So they would have been born in the 1850s, 1840s. And Bernabe, his father, and mother Manuela would have been born 1800 roughly. So we're still in the 1800s with these people. And in theory, it's recent. They had 20 years of not doing the festival, but you can't erase the documentation and
right.
And so 20 to 30 years of not doing a festival, but people it's handed down. Like in Cuba, they still, according to what I've heard, they talk about the time before Fidel, and that's 60 years ago. So
Yeah.
there's people still alive that were alive during capitalism in Cuba
Mm-hmm.
and would tell their children, grandchildren, and great grandchildren, we used to this and that. So, but a specific thing like what you're saying, that sometimes it just evaporates.
Yeah. The meaning behind it evaporates and is just
Yeah,
kind of lost over time.
there's a lot of that. The further away your distance from, and yeah, the further away your distance from the initial event, and people changing.
Mm-hmm.
They come, new fresh blood comes into an area,
Mm-hmm.
and other things take precedence and stuff. And but
Yeah.
that's how we lose history.
Yeah.
Those pieces, morsels of history.
Yes, it is. And there is more emphasis, I think, being placed on it now, even though we may not think so. But there is more emphasis being placed on saving history now, I think, than there has been in the previous, oh my gosh, 60, 70, 80 years. Because it was all about, I can remember in my lifetime growing up, it was, I'll bulldoze that old building and let's put up something new and shiny and pretty. Well, now people are going, wait a minute, this building was built in the 1920s. It's part of our history. We need to try to save it. Let's, restore it. Let's refurbish it. I mean, they're still in the middle of a huge renovation on a movie theater I used to go to as a kid. And we're talking about it's been under renovation for about 10 years, and they get new investors and new things get rebuilt and this, that, and the other. It's close to being opened again. I mean, they're getting really close, but it happens in fits and spurts as they find investors who want to, put money into it and be a part of this restoration project, where it could have been real easy just to bulldoze it and build something else.
Yeah.
So I'm glad to see that, not just because of the nostalgia of I used to go there to that theater as a kid, but but it is part of the history, local history to be sure, but it still is part of history.
Yeah. The United States, in contrast, there's two things that come to mind as far as holding on to history and whatnot, or landmarks and such.
Mm-hmm.
It is new in terms of when people say, "Oh, well, the United States has new," but it is not new at the same time if you consider that it got built up.
Oh,
So
yeah.
if you consider North America, it started getting people from Europe in here. There were already people here,
Mm-hmm.
granted, but we're talking from a European angle.
Right.
We're viewing the movement coming over from this, so we're not necessarily indigenously. And Frank, I had a little back and forth with an indigenous centric kind of person
Mm-hmm.
recently, and it's like you don't have to throw the baby out with the bathwater with things.
Right.
You can be all inclusive to see everything in its light. So just to say, it started in the 1600s here, as far as the beginnings of the United States.
Yeah.
But it started earlier because there was places in North America that were already populated by European people, including
Right.
the Spanish, the French, and so. I mean, there was people running, but the initiation of this thing, if we consider the United States, the way it's been taught to us, preceded by um, the colonies, British colonies, we can look at an early 1600s thing or 1600s thing, and then things were built.
Sure.
But in many cases, things were built in materials that could be corrupted due to
Well,
age and
yeah.
whatnot.
Yeah.
So, but we still have something that goes back roughly 500 years.
Yeah. There are some things, but it also depends on the incentive to preserve those things. There has to be an incentive to keep it and preserve it. It would be very easy to bulldoze the Alamo, but why?
Yeah,
You
that would
know,
be
that's
that would be a
part
national tragedy.
exactly. So it needs to be preserved. It may never be rebuilt to its former glory, but it doesn't need to be. I mean, that's part of history. When you talk about something as simple as, well, I mean, it's there will come a time where something as simple as a 1950s gas station
Would
will
be
be
special.
worth preserving because it is something special. Exactly. I mean, um, yes, we all have to live somewhere, and yes, we do need development and commerce and things of that nature.
Yeah.
But we can coexist. The new and the old can coexist side by side. I mean, it's done all over. If you look in Europe, I mean, there are buildings over there. Well, as Jamie pointed out, that church that you showed a picture of, they estimate to be somewhere around the 12th century. I mean, we have nothing here, no buildings that we know of here that are that old. We have evidence of civilizations that were here. I mean, when you look at Cahokia in Illinois, that was a huge city by the Mississippians, and it was bigger than London at the time. But we only have evidence that it was there. There are no structures remaining
No written record.
and no written language, so no written records exactly. But we do have, the structures built by the Aztecs and the Inca and the Maya, but with no written language we can only guess, we can only speculate at certain things. And I think that's one of the reasons why it is important to preserve this history, so future generations can take the guesswork out of it. And
Did
now
you know?
I know I'm talking about more recent things like a movie theater or what have you,
No, but it's
and
still important.
but it still is important to see what it was like when it was built in the 30s.
And the 50s, even or 30, early 1900s, 20th century. It's a unique moment in history, even though we're near it, but we're traveling in the opposite, and we're traveling down the road far from it now. Um, it was a unique, especially for the United States, but I guess the world in general, um, was a unique moment that should have some. We do have films and all this and that, so it's recorded. It's
Mhm.
probably the best recorded century in history at this
Yeah,
point, to the minute
to a
level.
point. Yeah.
I mean, you know, but I was gonna say those Aztecs that didn't, necessarily write and whatnot and this and that,
Mhm.
their languages were preserved
Yes.
almost immediately, right from the beginning, when the Spanish came. The monks and scribes, in order to Christianize them,
Mhm.
they either had to teach them how to speak Spanish, or they had to learn how to speak those dialects. And what they did was, little by little, the priests and those people, and this is all written,
Mhm.
like it could be searched on internet archives, like the actual books that um, they learned their language. And what they
Yeah.
did was they translated all their languages
Mhm.
into what we could read. And some of the first, I guess they're not dictionary. What would you other? I guess dictionary, or
Yeah, they would be translation dictionaries. Yeah.
the first ones prior to, actually, this is a little bit shocking. I read it, and prior to various European countries, the natives in the Americas had a dictionary prior to many Western European countries. That can be looked up. I don't know the specific ones. I don't even want to, but that can be looked up. So many indigenous languages were documented
Mhm.
500 years ago, so that it could be, if not, well, hell, because little by little, what happened was it all turned into Spanish anyhow. So
Yeah.
it got
Eventually
consumed.
down the road, yes.
Yeah, it all got consumed, and everybody started speaking Spanish because it was just the lingua franca of the Americas,
Yeah.
down there, and so that's how that. But so one, group comes in, and there's advantages and disadvantages depending on the scenario. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, and it's all a part of assimilation. But the thing
Yeah.
is, the monks saw the value in not just teaching them Spanish, but in learning their language.
Yeah. Well,
That
the ultimate purpose was to Christianize them.
it was, however, they also saw the value in preserving their language and translating the language,
Oh
you
yeah.
know. So you have things like the Rosetta Stone. We know how to read hieroglyphics because of the Rosetta Stone. That was put out in 3 different languages because 3 different peoples needed to be able to read it. It was a proclamation, basically, based on taxation or something to that effect. But because it was done in one language we could understand at the time, we were able to break that logjam and learn how to read the other 2 languages.
Yeah.
So that is important because now there's less speculation involved when you're talking about those other cultures,
Yeah.
because we do have some backstory, we do have some information that was documented at the time. So, wow, we got way off the subject of festivals, but that's cool. I mean, the whole subject is fascinating to me
Oh, but there's
because,
traditions
well, there are.
that falls under traditions that people pass on. So it's
Mhm.
still within the realm of that. Well, traditions. They have traditions. I'm sure. I don't know specific ones. So now we get into but
Uh-huh.
that would be unique to each different regional culture in South America, Central America, and so on. That would be unique. That maybe they do remember the origins of what tribe and
Mhm.
what this and this and that, or some that would just become natural parts of the culture, but yet they don't know why.
I would assume, I don't know this to be true, false, or just a thought off the top of my head. I would assume that some monk somewhere during that time documented their, at least some of their festivals or their worship or some form of their celebrations, if for nothing else, for the curiosity of it, to kind of, one of those, these people celebrate this because they think that and the other thing. I mean, even if it's just presented as a curiosity of how quaint these people are, that still gives us an insight to their history, their ways, and their cultures. And I think
Yeah.
that kind of thing is cooler than hell. So I would imagine if you delved deep into those books, you would find at least some of that. I mean, we're finding so much information, first contact with other cultures and things of that nature. I
But
mean,
if we don't write
mhm,
and pass it on, and we don't, now it's easier
mhm.
because there's photographs, movies, and all this. But
True.
if we don't, or if the people prior didn't sit down and, I guess, whatever, write letters and write like what we talked about last week or the week before, just little snippets of a bigger picture, we would lose so much. It's those little things that we would pass up in day to
Mhm.
day life that we open up a box 10 years, 15, 20, 30 from now, and we remember that is magical, you know?
Well,
Um, yeah,
you said a minute ago that the 20th century is probably the most well documented century
yeah,
in history. And I said to a point, yes, in many ways. Well, no, just in all ways, you're 100% correct. It was documented, it was either written down and published, or it was filmed, or there's photographs. Where I was going when I said to a point is we have since discovered that conservation of those things, of those documents, is even harder than creating them, because all things break down, all things deteriorate, they oxidize, and we have lost a goodly portion of the film that was shot, the film footage. We've lost a great number of documents, whether it be through just the natural rotting process or because we were conserving them improperly, not knowing any better, or disasters like fires or a roof cave in and flood a building or something like that. So conserving these things depends on the medium that you're conserving it in. And I don't think there's a perfect solution, because all of our conservation techniques depend on something else. You can put it on paper, but now you have to conserve that paper. And it better be acid free paper, because as the paper breaks down, it creates acid, which more or less eats on itself. And if the paper has acid in it when it's made, it just accelerates that process. They found out that the old celluloid movie film rolled up on these reels, the emulsion would actually start to fail and it would turn brittle. The film would stick to itself and you couldn't unroll it. It had to be preserved with something in between the layers of film on these reels.
Yeah.
I mean, they've lost hundreds, thousands of pieces of footage of various events that are just lost to time because they deteriorated.
The also another, so just an idea that pops up, which is an obvious thing, but obvious things that aren't said
Mm-hmm.
little by little become less obvious. So repetition is a good thing in order to exercise the memory,
Right.
not individually alone, but on broader scales. So if you take something like the 20th century, which all this is going to be obvious, but I'm just saying
Sure.
it should be obvious. If you take the 20th century and you consider all the people, let's just say in America, but it could apply to the world at large, because it's all the people that in their homes respectively had a pen and paper, that took photographs, some as time went on, movie reels, news people reporting in their local districts or areas, legal documentation through courts and precincts, marriage licenses, just everything piled on, all this documentation, census records,
Mm-hmm.
all these things, and you multiply that by what it truly is across the country, using the United States as an example, you have an interwoven, although not individually, not all connected at first glance, but you have more documents than you can read through in a lifetime,
Yeah.
just in that one census.
Yeah.
And here's the thing: individual people with individual interests in their particular areas, sorting that kind of stuff out into different formats, like kind of like what we do and others do in our respective little areas of interest, and placing them somewhere, such as this very important, I think, places like Family Tree or Ancestry.com and other places, um, individually, where maybe I can't have access because I can't even think of it, to a town that's local to you, that holds all these gems of historic value.
Right.
But through time, even though I can't access it because I don't have the time to access everything, what happened in Belgium in this particular year,
Right.
in the 12th century, all these things. But if someone 100 years from now, due to individual efforts, has the insight to go to Amsterdam or to research Amsterdam, they will have, or they will come across people that in their area were doing the fine work of, what do they call it? They say, um, unthankful work. That's the
Mm-hmm.
wrong way to say it. There's a way to say it
Thankless.
properly.
Thankless
Thankless,
job.
the thankless job at the moment that these people do.
Mm-hmm.
Like I don't expect any. The only reward that I get, less the high that I got when I page to
Yeah.
the next page,
I
and that
know
image,
exactly what you mean.
and I saw my second great grandparents' names. The first thing I saw was, I saw it, and I stopped. I said, "This is them. Is it? Let me read
You had
further."
to re-question you. Yes.
I had to stop and then reread it. And when I found it, I said to myself, after 5 years, this is what I said to myself. This is a gift from God. I thank God humbly, because that's me. That's just me. And I'm not anything special. I'm not saying like, hey, look at me. I think no. I'm just saying as a matter of fact because it's beyond me to control such a fine. Yes, I'm doing the logistic back and forth, but you don't understand how I found it. Let me just say how I found it, just so you can see why I said that. And you could say coincidence and stuff, and I'm not arguing that point. I just said what I was going through the books, and then I got tired, and I clicked out and saw the map of pages, and I just started scrolling, and I clicked on one.
And there it was.
And there it was.
Oh, man.
And we're talking in this particular volume, there were like 2,000 something pages.
Jeez. And you landed on the right one.
And I landed. That's how I'm not going to sit here and lie because I've usually been very. So.
Wow.
So the thankless job of individuals doing things that aren't appreciated at the moment,
I know,
are serving a function for the future. Is what I'm saying.
I know I've made a big thing about it, and you don't think it. Maybe you do. Maybe I'm assuming too much. But just the research you have done on your surname and putting what you have put together and put out in several different places for the public to see, it's there. If you are interested in your surname, you only have to look. You will find it now because you did the legwork. You're doing the searching.
Most of the people, they speak Spanish, so they'll have to translate it. But because I'm like one of the few that are here.
But it's there.
Yeah.
But it's there, and it's collated, and it's put together. All the I's have not been dotted and all the T's have not been crossed because all the dots haven't been connected yet. But there is more information on your family out there now than there ever has been.
Collated.
And it's people like you doing that kind of work that's going to make something like this possible, that's preserving the history. Now you're preserving your history.
Right.
But you are not the only one that's interested in it. You know that because you're in contact with other people that are. But who's to say who's going to be looking for this in 20 or 30 or 40 years or 100 or 200 years? But because somebody took the time to research this and put it on in various mediums, in various locations, because nothing electronic may exist in 100 years.
We don't know.
We have no clue. But because you've put it in different mediums in different places, the chances are if somebody wants to find it, they will. So, and I think that's just as valuable as trying to renovate a 200-year-old building, because it is history.
Let me say this too. So, a couple of things. I think this is a good thing to say, at least for myself. All my life, up until 2017-18, was focused on the study of music, which involves, yes, technique and study and repetition of certain passages in order to, but the main idea was me searching for the ability to express, to learn the language of music, which we talked about the other day, but just enough for me to do what I want to do, not for the sake of just, it's funny, although I did do a lot of that, but the idea was to be able to bring out ideas in song using that format, and which I did for most of my life. Then in 2018, Steve said, oh, well, here is Ancestry. Now that I see that you're interested, because I was interested, I was mentioned. This is why I'm saying this. When I began to study, or when I began to fill out the format using Ancestry's method, which is not just Ancestry's method, but that's the platform I used, it started to open another door for me in terms of what I would call, just on a moment's notice right now, collating thoughts and ideas in its proper file folder. And I didn't even see it just as a matter of genealogy. I saw it as a matter of also, it applies to everything. Now, I go overboard when I do something. I do it like full throttle. Like I will invest everything in doing something to learn it, to squeeze all the juice out of it. But the ability to collate things properly, and we had some discussions too, although they were laissez-faire conversations, just generalized talking. But you mentioned, evidence and such. There was a discussion we had a long time ago where you said, well, we want to have proof, and this is what this is.
We need documentation. Yeah.
And I understood that in a sense, basically. But the more I started to hash that out, I became very rigid with that concept as it being ultimately important, because it is ultimately important, because there's no way. So like, if anybody comes to me, if I tell somebody, well, look, it's because my ancestors are from here, this, and that, anybody could say, yeah, right. And I could say, well, if you're that adamant about it, do you have a moment? Because I will show you documentation.
Here's the documentation.
Exactly. And we'll see what's what. And why is that powerful? Because you have evidence that connects what you're saying.
Because it's the truth, and that's where we got into that discussion, I think, about family folklore, because family folklore can say one thing, and then you find out, wait a minute, no, somebody got a couple of facts twisted. This was the real story. This was the family folklore. We now have to set the folklore aside and focus on what really happened.
Right.
So that's why it's important, because this is all a search for the truth. It's all a search for history. It's all a search for the family's history.
Yeah.
And I think I said, if we get a clue, or we have a hint about something, or this person may be a relative, we'll take that information and we'll set it aside. We don't automatically discount it, but we don't automatically add it as fact either, until we have the documentation and we can prove it.
Yeah.
Then it becomes fact.
Well,
so
yeah, I mean, you can't get as, considering the hundreds of years, depending on who you're looking at, you can't get better than, for instance, the Santiago and Manuela document I just showed, because it connects to my grandfathers. It connects them to it connects all the dots.
Right.
But in some cases, it becomes more watered down.
Sure.
To where you have just a straggly document. And even though that points in that direction, it's difficult. So one of my second great grandparents direct, I have 2 documents to connect him. But if I could find a wedding, that would just completely just for my comfort zone would completely, because the thing is, the more documentation, the better.
Yeah.
In some cases, the further back and further back and further back, it becomes, a quote in a book.
Yeah.
A quote in an ancient book, or ancient medieval book, or something like that. And which is good. And your mind says, it sounds good. But it's not sufficient for me. But
now let's prove it. Yeah.
But some people, that's good enough for them. But if they were confronted, like let's say I can go back, like there was a lady from Spain, according to her, and you remember that show with that red hair guy that did my review of my DNA thing?
Yes, he did a review of your DNA video. Yeah.
There's a lady that went in the comments, because I look it up every now and then just to see what people are commenting. It's really a small people from Cuba. You're talking about like 11 million people in the greater screen. Well, she says, this lady from Spain, well, I don't understand this whole DNA thing. What's going on here? I did mine and I've got X amount Italian, X amount this, X amount that. I don't understand that this has to just apply for European people. Suggesting and she's right in a certain sense, but not in the sense that she was saying, suggesting that my results, why are they so European? If I'm from the Americas, and this is a Spanish lady, um, and I never answered it because it's just like, but the concept of people
People
moving
move.
from the concept of people, well, one, the concept of moving people moving from the old world to the new world
Hmm.
is pretty easy to wrap your head.
Yeah.
The concept, and for a Spanish person, so for people that are not Spanish, like they don't have the clear concept of the same things that happened from Europe to the Americas kind of happened in the same way. But the problem is that the assumption is that there's a lot of mixing going on in the Americas, and it's true. But the problem is with many people is that um, people never stop coming. Some
Hmm.
families are newer, and some
Hmm.
families are older, and some people did, and some people didn't. It all the variations. She couldn't wrap her head around why my whatnot is European because of being American, and um and so you're gonna have people like that. If you don't look at history,
Yeah.
um, you're gonna go on assumptions that are not true. I wanted to tell her something. Say, listen, the problem is you have to understand. But I said it's not worth it because if
It's
you
not
can't,
worth it. She don't want to hear it.
yeah, if you can't climb over that hill
Hmm.
easily by
Yeah.
just doing 3 Google searches,
Yeah.
it's a useless endeavor.
I,
And then I had a conflict with a guy. My comment was very even keeled.
mhm.
I'm not doing away with any number of people. I'm saying, well, X, Y, and Z, and I
Mhm.
put a little tapestry of the different not favoring necessarily one thing, although I have my personal preference and bias, but I laid it out clearly, even against my own. And he wasn't having it because his worldview is indigenous angled,
Mhm.
and so he started lighting the flames, like going. I said, at one point, I said, "Dude, you are biased. You're you're imagining conversations that's not being had here." And the dude would just frothing and stuff because his worldview,
Well,
um, instructions is from this indigenous whatnot, which is fine, but I, I guess the point I'm making is that yes, we can localize about history, but we can't. Like I've told you before, like there's no so as an example, neither here nor there, but in the 1500s into the 1600s, there was a Spanish Armada
mhm.
adventure where the Spanish were toppled by the British, and many things ensued. If I think of myself as Spanish, um, I'm going to think, well, damn British. And I can do that within the context of the time,
Mhm.
but I can't do that in the context of me because I am not that time and place and whatnot, although I
Yeah.
have connections to it. But at that stage of the game, you're talking about a historical event between
Yeah.
peoples, and so we look at it, we
Mhm.
understand it, we appreciate the complexity of it, but we're not,
Well,
you know, I guess you get my point.
some people don't want to be challenged when they display their selective moral outrage, and you deny them their few minutes of self-righteous indignation.
Right. That is true.
You know, and I have zero time for those people. I have zero patience with those people. So, there are certain things you have to put into perspective. Number one, a historical perspective, but you also have to decide what hill you want to die on. I have so many things to say about people like that. Some of it very innocent, some of it not so innocent. But I don't want to engage in a rock fight. It because it serves no purpose. There is no purpose. This person has a concept in their head. I'm not going to change that concept. The only thing I'm going to do is argue. And I just don't get any entertainment out of arguments anymore. So I don't bother with it. But if you're the kind of person who's going to jump into the YouTube comments and start a fight like that, that tells me that you're also the type of person that would put the milk carton back in the fridge with that much left in the bottom of it. Which also tells me that you're the type of person that when you're sitting on the john and you notice that you have your boxers on backwards, you leave it that way.
I'm so
And
glad because the other night, what happened was, no, I'm not even joking. I said, wait a second, this ain't right. This ain't right. And I did contemplate. I said, well, what, like Hillary Clinton, I said, well, what difference does it make?
yep. Well, you find out real quick. To get back to a different topic here, or the original topic here, Jim Dockrell says that there is still the International Plowing Championships, and one of the categories is still horse-drawn plows. That kind of thing is fun. And I don't know about Canada, but I know down here in certain parts of the country, and it's mainly in the Midwest, they have steam engine gatherings, for lack of a better term. And you will have everything from steam powered tractors these things are huge. They're the size of a railroad locomotive with these gigantic steam boilers that will pull, 20, 30, 40 plows at once. And you can find videos on YouTube of this happening, where you have this one big gigantic steam powered tractor, and they've got a rig on it that holds one plow in the middle and two off to the side, then two more off of either side of that, then more off of either side of and a guy standing on each plow, and drone shots of this one tractor plowing, an acre at a whack. They're just huge things. That kind of thing is cool. And to me, that's part of history preservation as well, because you have enthusiasts that are so into that kind of thing that they will take apart this steam tractor that was built in the late 1800s or the early 1900s and restore it piece by piece by piece to where you still have this working machine that looks brand new. That to me is awesome. That is awesome. You're saving the technology and you're saving the history.
Yeah. In order for things like that to happen, where people are cognizant of things to be saved, it requires people from, let's just say, any town in America. It could be anywhere in the world, obviously, but I'm just saying, it requires that there's a ongoing lineage of people that settled there and have that tradition. Because what happens is, the world we live in, and not so much probably in rural areas much, because it's different in terms of the amount of people. But when you're talking about places like Miami, Florida, or Los Angeles, California, or New York and whatnot, you have this convergence of so many different people.
Mm-hmm.
And certain, like, let's say a certain town and within a major metropolis type place had a certain tradition, but you have such influx of people coming in, and if the people there don't take that moment to preserve said festival or whatnot, the new people don't have that memory, and it just starts to, and I guess new memories occur, but we lose, because what it is that we're moving in a direction of just things, and people do move from place to place and marry and all these things, and then so that's why it's important that these traditions, in my opinion, at least somehow, some sort of, even just in some cases, they'll have like a plaque and say, this is the site of the original blah, blah, blah. Something.
Yeah.
but we're heading into the direction, not everywhere, but into the direction of more entanglement of people coming from different places with different traditions. And so is the case of Miami. Miami is not the same place it was prior to the Cuban exile community by any stretch.
Right.
And now with the influx of people from New York and California, even though there's a lot of Cubans here, as time progresses, shifts start to occur. And you might have, maybe 200 years from now, I'm speculating, all night Cuban diner in one corner of Miami because everything progresses.
It's possible.
And when you go in there, nobody's Cuban. You know what I'm saying? But the tradition, the tradition is still there as a leftover from a bygone era or whatnot, something like that.
Right. The tradition is there, but the meaning behind it is lost.
Right.
You don't know why. I mean, we have parades all the time in this country, and some people know why they're there. Other people just know, oh, we get to go to a parade. I mean, okay, fine, great. If that's all you're interested in is going to a parade, or all you're interested in is standing outside and watching the fireworks, then fine. You don't need to know.
Yeah.
But we do need to know why we set off fireworks on 4th of July. What are we doing? What is the symbolism behind that? What's the purpose for it? Just little things like that. I have zero issue with incorporating new celebrations and new festivals and new rites and rituals from other cultures that move in, because I think that is part of what makes us us, is that a lot of people will say that there is no American culture, and I will argue this until the cows come home. There is an American culture, and it's made up of that interweaving and that overlap of so many cultures that have come here and those that were here before us.
Yeah.
And that's what makes the culture.
It's complicated because
it's extremely complicated, and I wouldn't have it any other way, because that's what makes the world go round.
But the problem also in the concept of American and American culture is in that you're saying, and the assumptions that are made outside of America, or in some cases are made outside of America looking in, and sometimes from the inside looking looking at the rest of America.
Sure.
And that is that there's a one timeline instead of that hodgepodge that you're talking about. Anybody could. So if you would probably know more. If you're traveling in Europe, and this doesn't apply to everybody. This is a anecdote theorizing. This is not. But I'm saying that the principle involved in it, is it rational or not? I think it is, but we'll see. You're traveling in Europe and whatnot, and so when you're confronted in a conversation and whatnot, and you reveal that you're American, for them, they don't know what San Francisco or Oregon proper, the specifics of, they just know America and whatever the TV. So their image of where you are from and the thought processes that you may or may not have and all that is simplified, where they can associate whatever understanding they have of it. And most people don't go further out than that unless they engage further. But the truth is that it's more America and the different traditions from place to place are extremely, even though there's an interweaving, but not everybody sees it that way from the outside, because they just don't go that far. And from the inside, I'm speculating. Last thing I'll say, I'm speculating, but I don't know, because I've heard it said, amongst my friends in good spirit, but still, it's something to take note of. There's always been and you hear it from Miami people too. Miami is just North Cuba, right? Now, some people say that lovingly, just as an aside, some people say it with slight um, antagonized
Distaste.
this disdain for, because it has its own thing that's quite its thing, but it's completely steeped in American culture as well. But the problem is with a place like Miami, it's so, I'm using it because it's my point of reference, but if you, so anywhere in Kentucky that you might arrive at, you have a very, one structured, generalized thing without outside influence mixing of too many crazy things. You might have Mennonites and some this and that, and some, Protestant this and that, cultural but it's still sort of, but here you have this tropical experience and all that, and yet American, and yet, so it's hard for some people to so they'll say, oh, this is like North Cuba, isn't it? As it, yeah, but some people have they feel negative towards it because they're not the
Well,
majority.
they've never experienced it. They've never experienced it. They've never lived it. They've never learned to enjoy it.
No,
And
I'm
to
saying people. Go ahead. Go ahead.
and on your point, to your point on how complicated it is, and how the people overseas, for example, and let's say Europe, um, don't have that reference of where you live in Florida and where I live in Oregon, because you can't. There is, they know, unless they've been here and traveled the country extensively, they have no way of grasping how diverse and varied America is. Just out here regionally, um, Oregon is as different from San Francisco, California, 400 miles away, as it is from Miami, Florida, almost 3,000 miles away.
Yeah.
They're completely different places. There is no way to convey that through the American pop culture, which is where most people, quote unquote, learn about America.
Mm-hmm.
I've been to Canada a couple of times. I know very little about Canada. I thought the places that I went were beautiful. And if they weren't under 3 meters of snow every year, I would consider vacationing there a lot, because they were so gorgeous. People were very gracious, very welcoming, and I had a good time. But there is no way I can absorb everything that makes Canada Canada
Right.
from the pop culture I've seen
Mm-hmm.
or heard or listened to. And it's
Absolutely.
the
Yeah.
same thing with America. And it's the same thing with Europe.
Mm-hmm.
Germany is as different from France as it is from Tokyo. They're completely different places, even though from our house in Germany, Paris was a 5 hour drive.
Yeah.
So they all have their good points, their bad points, their charms, their language, their cultures, their celebrations, their good days, their bad days, their history, both good and bad. But you can't convey that in pop culture in something that's consumable to the average person. It would have to be a career study. Jim Dockerel here. Canada has the same issue as the US, lots of regional differences, even within the same province sometimes. Yeah, because you have the big cities and then you have the more rural areas. You have further north and further south. I would imagine the culture closer to the border, the US border, is different from the culture that's further up north. Of
Yeah. It's different.
several hours travel from the border. And it's those differences that make it such a fascinating place to visit, travel, and experience. I miss being down south. I really do. When we lived there, I didn't like the humidity. I didn't like the bugs, but I miss the hell out of the people. I miss the hell out of the food, and I miss the hell out of the laid back atmosphere. You know, it was always very friendly people, some of the best food you'll ever sample in your life, and just relax kind of attitude.
Yeah.
Out here, it's more hustle and bustle. Even though I live in a smaller town, people just want to get there. They just want to get there and do it. They don't want to mess around. Let's go. Let's go. Let's go. Even though it is a small town, and it's a bit more of a palaver to go do anything. Basically, is what I'm getting at. Whereas down south, you have this kind of a, all right, we'll get there when we get there. Don't worry about it. Okay, you know.
Let
Uh,
me.
just a real quick aside here. Jim says some places around here have more dogs than people. There are entire states down here. For instance, Montana has 100 times more cattle than people. There are 100 times more cows in Montana than there are people.
Um, just to use some of the things that you were saying in from my what popped into mind. So even though I'm in a big city, even though I was born in a big city, this is a small town within the county that
Yeah.
originally, and I've mentioned this before,
Uh-huh.
wasn't wildly populated,
Hmm.
but within my lifetime has
Grown. Yeah.
grown and been encompassed where I'm literally in this. I'm literally in the center of everything because from where I stand, from where I sit here, live,
Hmm.
I have a university, colleges galore, two full-on malls,
Hmm.
businesses from everything from Walmart to just everything, and it's all within, if not a walk, a drive
Hmm.
of a few miles. And then I have um, the expressway that takes you to the rest of Miami, and then I have the Everglades on one side, just 12 miles away. So it's been encased in the whatnot, in the bigger thing. But I've always had a small or a very laid back, and they do say, you know how they say, oh, Margaritaville and stuff.
Hmm.
Jimmy Buffett does
Wasting away in Margaritaville. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, that's for people with money.
Yeah.
You have to be Jimmy Buffett but for common folks, they're hustling and bustling. Um, but you know what I'm saying.
Yeah.
So, but I've always had the spirit of laid back. I don't know if I give that impression or not. Maybe for the past few years, I'm very rigid in my thinking in terms of trying to nail things down. But that's due to what I was saying about ancestry and Steve. It's made me see, trying to do away with falsehoods it's been a thing. But I'm generally like, I'm not like bouncing off walls and whatnot. My grandfather came from a place that was a very small place.
Hmm.
My father was born in a place that was a very small place. The people that came before me were from places that were small places, so they had a certain attitude towards, stuff. And I think that they translated, they handed that down to me, even in the midst of the chaos that is this, you know,
Hmm.
urban, environment. So I find it interesting how that works out. So I will see people. I'm more laid back in a general sense, but this does influence me, obviously, at the same time. So
Well, just an observation. When you're passionate about something, you do get a bit intense at times.
yeah,
But yeah, there's a calm demeanor that underlies that. So, and I think most people are, not everybody. I mean, I know some people that are just intense all the time,
yeah,
you know. And it's like they have the metabolism of a hummingbird and go, 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 gotta be there, gotta, and it doesn't matter if you're sitting watching a football game, they're the ones that's going to be jumping up and down on the couch because they don't agree with the ref's call.
yeah.
But and it's just like, dude, calm down, have some 7-layer dip. It's going to be all right.
Yeah.
You're not playing. Just let
Yeah.
them do their job. But it but then again, even that is part of what makes people
Variation.
people. I mean, and it is, think about how dull and how boring and how drab it would be if we were all the same.
Well,
I'm
yeah, because there'd be no. Let me tell you this. So yesterday, I went to purchase something at Home Depot.
Mhm,
I had not been to Home Depot. I've been here all my life, obviously,
mhm,
but I always feel this slight, even if it's somewhere in the back. But when I walk to a place like Home Depot,
mhm.
maybe it's due to I'm aware of the scenarios that my family came from and whatnot and stuff. But every time I walk into a Home Depot or some place like that, that's such a vast thing or such a,
Mhm.
you can't help but like look and say, we are so. I mean, I don't
Oh
own
yeah,
all these things, but the ability to buy them if one needs it is
options,
there. What?
options.
Yeah, and when you see such plenty,
Yeah,
even though we're used to it, it's like this is a. It's within the scenario that we're human beings. We have a beginning, and boy, we're lucky.
big time, big
You
time.
know?
But that also leads to us being spoiled. Let's think about one of the most
Yeah,
basic things in the world: water. You have options. You can
yeah,
drink the water that comes out of your tap if you pay your water bill every month,
yeah,
or you can go to the store. You ever been to the store and just look at the water aisle? They have a aisle for water now.
yeah.
I don't remember this growing up. I remember one shelf that had distilled water on it. But now you've got 15 different uh, kinds of spring water, not brands, different type. I didn't know there were different types of spring water. Well, this is a glacier fed spring, and this is not glacier fed. This comes from the bowels of the earth. That there's one company that advertises from the bowels of the earth. Yeah, give me a steaming glass of that.
A
You
hot
have
steaming pile glass of that.
of something from the bowels of anything. Yeah, that's a good selling point. That marketing dude needs to go back to school and pay attention. So, but the different brands, and yeah, there you go, Robin. Smart water, smart water. It's still two hydrogen molecules and one oxygen molecule, but it's smart water. Or you can have Dasani, or you can have Crystal Geyser, or you can have Fiji. Then we get into the ones that are naturally carbonated, like Avion. We have so many choices. Am I the only one that's noticed? Am I the only one that finds it mildly ironic that the name Avion is the word naive spelled backwards?
I didn't even think of it.
Write it down and check it out. It is naive spelled backwards. That can't be an accident. Anyway, uh, we have so many choices when it comes to just that. We don't go into the store to buy peanut butter and there is a label that says peanut butter. No, do you want creamy? Do you want crunchy? Do you want Peter Pan, Skippy, Jif? We've got 15 different varieties made by 11 different brands. So we have so many choices and so many options. Sometimes we get paralyzed by that and don't get any of it because we're afraid to make a decision.
Yeah,
So and that leads to us being spoiled because we expect it to always be there. So
yeah.
when it's not there, we go crazy. And I'm just as guilty as anybody,
Of
you
course,
know.
we're all involved in it.
Mhm.
We're all part of it. But I'm
Ex-
saying there's moments of reflection that one says, "Wow, incredible," and it's good. A remind. So one of the biggest things, and maybe I don't know if it's old age and stuff, but I always had a sense of a certain amount of. I don't want. I'm not trying to. Like I've said this once before in the thing. Some things are just things that it's just part of your understanding, but you're not trying to, you know, like, oh look, this is good, and I'm not saying, but it's good to reflect and have some humility.
Yeah, it is.
Because yeah, but it's difficult too because we're human and we're bound to make terrible, like
Mhm.
our minds go off the rails and stuff. It's just part of the whole thing. But to every now and again realize, well, holy smokes! I mean, come on.
Yeah.
I've got two major malls just
Mhm.
down the road,
Yeah.
and I can't be bothered. And they have a bunch of awesome stores, and you can even window walk and enjoy that.
Mhm.
I can't be bothered.
Well, you don't have a need to go.
Right? No, right. But the
But
point is
yeah,
that
yeah, I understand. The option is there. You can go do it if you want to. If
right,
you need to go get a pair of shoes because you have a function coming up, you have choices.
yeah,
You know.
which is incredible because I mean, I guess there was a time where there was one local shoe guy, and there was
Mhm.
maybe a select few options, maybe if, at best, and
And maybe that may be the only pair of shoes you ever have in your lifetime, and you keep fixing them and repairing them as you wear the sole out.
yeah.
So,
Even if your foot becomes like a normal adult, and now you're Bigfoot sitting in a little moccasin like that
yeah,
with your toes sticking
exactly.
out. Hey
And
Bob, how you doing? You like
put
my
putting newspaper inside of it so your sock doesn't get wet because you worn a hole in the sole. You know, Jim Dockrell says I can choose between 27 different barbecues, 18 different lawnmowers, and 43 different toilets all in one store. Yeah, Jim, and have them delivered. Never have
hey
to lift it into the truck.
hey Bob, is that your big toe sticking out of your shoe, or are you just happy to see me?
Yeah,
No,
really.
no, I'm just happy to see you. Well, I suspected as much, Bob. Be on your way now.
That's something that I have to work on. I've got a pair of flip flops that I have actually worn out. I've worn holes in the sole, and I've got to get another set. I just don't think about it until I go to put those on. I went, damn it, you know, we were
See,
just down there. I need to get some. I just
I'm
I just don't do that kind of thing, man.
I'm of the belief, judging by what you said,
Mhm.
which red flag should shoot up because I didn't find it unreasonable at all that you have holes in the bottom. Like I listened to that, and said perfectly reasonable. Mark is quite. So I'll say, and that's a big thing to say because in theory the proper thing would be these are worn and now let's go do it. But I'll take my time and I'll think about it. I have that same attitude. So that's what I'm saying. But
Well,
what I'm saying is that left to our own devices,
mhm.
meaning men, meaning in a general sense there are variations, but left to our own devices, I believe to a large extent, maybe not completely, but for a good amount of men, we would regress to cave art
Yeah.
and foraging and
Yes.
hunting.
Absolutely.
Yeah, if not for women, if not for women.
There is one thing that, and you just nailed it. There is one thing that keeps us from doing that, and that is women.
I think so.
Most most men, well, it's a fact. Most men don't give a ding dong about having a nice car. They know women like nice cars, so men want a nice car. Most men would live in a cardboard box if they could get away with it. They don't care about having a nice house, but they
Maybe
know
poke
women.
a hole for a window.
Yeah, well, that's what that handle hole is. You know, you pop it up and you have some. When it gets a little chilly, you pull it down and close it.
Yeah.
Um, they know women like nice houses, so we have nice houses. Men don't care about dressing up. I buy my shirts in 6 packs, you know, rolled up in the plastic bag hanging from the peg on the pegboard. But I'm not
That's
out to
good.
impress anybody but myself. You know, I will buy merch to support my friends, but that's about as expensive as I get when it comes to buying clothes for myself. The only suit I have is my old Class A uniform in the Army, which I can no longer wear.
So you look like what's this guy from ACDC at this point?
No, I'm a blue jeans and t-shirt kind of guy, and half of the time
Angus Young.
anymore, Angus Young. No, half of the time anymore, I'm in pajama pants and a t-shirt, like right
when
now.
you go to a suit, what is it, a hat and tails or whatever they call it?
I
Uh,
I can't go.
you look like You look like Angus Young with the squished up shorts. That
No,
it's riding
no.
Calcutta. Your shorts are riding Calcutta like there's no tomorrow.
You've got the dimensions wrong, dude. I didn't get taller. I got wider. It's not. It's the length is not the issue. It's my girth that's changed, not my height. I've been this height since forever. Now,
Have you
I
thought
will
of this?
agree, Jim. I will agree with Jim Dockrell on this. I like nice cars. I want an Aston Martin. If I hit the lottery and had tons of money to spend, that is the only thing I would do for myself is I would get me an Aston Martin. I'm with you 100% on that. But the rest of it, I don't give a ding dong. I really don't. I really don't care. You know, I've
I had
had.
some jokes about Aston Martin. I was going to reword things, but let's leave it
He
at that.
said he'd settle for a Mercedes. I've owned a Mercedes. They're a decent car. A little pricey to repair when you have to, but it's not as expensive as a BMW, so you have that going for you.
I'll say one thing. The best car I owned in terms of fun with it was my little Mazda Miata um, convertible. I've told you before, but I used to drive everywhere in Miami.
Mm-hmm.
You're low to the ground, so it feels like a race car. It picked up, but it wasn't like crazy, but it was still fun. And at any given time throughout your drive, day or night, dude, it was a great time for me. All things considered, I could just lift my hand up, touch the ceiling of the hood of the roof,
Roof, yeah,
unlock it, and just pull my hand back, and I was
convertible.
open to the convertible. It was so awesome.
Yeah.
And just the lights and the towering buildings, and you're down low,
Mm-hmm.
and it being Miami and all the things.
The
Oh
lights and
boy,
everything else. Yeah, I was the same way with motorcycles. I mean, I loved the whole thing, but you can't carry a family around on a motorcycle. So when I married, I was forced to get respectable, and that had to go. So, what can you say? Now I'm so old, I don't want to get on a
you
motorcycle.
could have kept your motorcycle, bought a prepaid booklet of bus,
Oh yeah, that'd gone over real well.
and say, okay, kids, here's one for you, one for you. Okay, I'll catch you there. Be
Reach at the
safe.
grocery store. Yeah, yeah, that ain't
Here's
gonna
some
happen.
here's some baskets.
But anymore now, I think the most fun I had in a car was my old El Camino. I loved driving that El Camino, the mullet of the car world. It was classy sedan up front and Bubba's pickup in the back, and I loved it. I mean, I wish I'd have never gotten rid of it, but and I've kind of been half-heartedly looking for another one, but they're getting too pricey even for me.
Good times.
Yep, it was. It was a great car. Loved it. Oh man, yeah. Yes, Jim. Don't get a. Well, it's not really yellow. It's more of a beigeish cream color Mercedes. Those are used as taxis in Germany. We have yellow cabs. They have that cream colored one.
Give me half a second.
All right,
Just
time's
one
up.
sec. I can hear you.
Okay. Yeah, the Mercedes was used as taxis over in Germany. The I don't know. I'm not. I used to be real hot and heavy into cool cars, but not anymore. I mean, the upkeep on them, the expense of constantly working on them, and I don't want to constantly work on it. I want to get in, drive off, and go do what I want to do, and then come home. So the appeal of having a hot rod is long gone. I think I grew out of that. Oh gosh, probably my 30s. So, yeah, as Linda says, our BMW was a stereo box. When I sold that BMW, it was a 530. When I sold that BMW, I told the dude, "You're buying the stereo. You got to take the car that goes with it." So it was that bad. It was the trash mobile. But, over there, it was, with BMW, Mercedes all being made right there, it was kind of like Chevrolet and Ford over here. They were expensive, but they were expensive on purpose uh, for a new one. A used one, not so much. Linda bought our first car over in Germany while I was in school. I was away for 30 days at a school. Uh, she bought that Mercedes for $400. And we drove that for the first 2 years we lived there. And it was a good little car. But when it died hard and would have been just too expensive to fix it. So, not great little car. It wasn't all that little either. It was a Mercedes 230 SE. Drove that thing all over Germany. Yeah. I think we may have a picture of it. I'll see if we got one.
That'll be cool to see.
So, oh well.
I mean, yeah, there's just certain things like you don't get the same vibe, or at least I never did, out of any car other than that Mazda. There was something special about, and it ran so good, so well. I sold it for the one that I have now. I traded it, and because it's more of something that you'd use in the Everglades.
Yeah.
But the feeling of being open to the air and driving, and it being compact the way it was, it was special.
I've been driving SUVs and vans for so long. If I get into anything else, I feel like I'm in one of those radio flyer wagons being towed behind a grandpa's pickup or something like that. I just feel so low down, and I'm like everybody's looking at me and everything. Because I mean, our Jeep sits up, and I drove vans for work and all this other good stuff, and I'm used to sitting up high. And now, if I get in anything else, it was just like, oh cow.
Yeah. Oh, I did have two Mustangs. One that was bought for me as a present by my grandparents with T-tops.
Yeah, we had a Grand Prix with T-tops. Yeah.
That was fun. And then one that I bought for myself after the fact that was more compact. I forget what style it was, but it was all 1980s style Mustangs. Those were fun by a lot, but the Mazda was special.
Yeah.
There was something special about it. Just love driving it.
I got to get personal. I got to ask you, you still doing the bike ride thing?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah?
Yeah, although, I've been doing the bike ride on a continuous basis. But now I've run into a problem.
What's that?
So it started making a sound, a clackling sound. Every time I turn the pedal and it does a full rotation, there's a clicking, and it ruined. So I'd rather there not be any noise, although I can do everything because there's nothing actually wrong with it. But I don't feel like I'm stealth like I had been. So it's almost embarrassing biking through neighborhoods like that.
Yeah. Two things, and we can talk about this behind the scenes after we land the plane. Get you a can of chain lube, and you probably need to adjust your derailleur.
What's that?
It's 5-speed, 10-speed. What is it?
It's a mountain bike.
Yeah, but I mean, how many gears does it have?
Truckload. I didn't even pay. I bought it and I didn't even pay attention to it.
The derailleur is what makes the chain jump to the next gear on the back wheel. And then that needs to be adjusted because it sounds to me like it got moved a little bit. A cable stretched, and the chain is rubbing on it as you pedal. So it just needs to be adjusted. And there's a couple of screws you can twist that'll just move that just a little bit. It'll probably take that away.
I guess you can tell me after the fact.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we can. Yeah, and there's videos all over the place. But yeah, yeah.
Okay.
Jim just said derailleur needs adjusting on the back wheel. Yep. Or possibly the front. You might have whacked the front one with your leg and kind of turned it cockwise, and it's
I don't even know. You'll tell me because
yeah.
I don't even know what to look for. Like I could look up derailleur, but it's better to hear what you have to say.
Sure. Okay. All right. We can talk about it after the fact.
Yeah. But again, so I have continued.
Mhm.
And when I get back, remember, I've not done proper exercise for over 6 years
Yeah.
in any continuous manner.
Mhm.
And it really has taken its toll on me. And in the past 2 weeks that I've been doing so,
Mhm.
I've felt improvements that have been significant for me, where I could see a better direction if I
Mhm.
continue.
Yeah.
But it's exhausting because at the same time I've not done work like that for a while.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. I know that feeling well, um, because it's been longer for me than it has for you. You said 5 years, 6 years. I haven't done any serious exercise. The last serious exercise I got was building the shop shed, and that about killed me. So,
well, even like I've been doing some other type of exercise as well,
Mhm.
like low impact, high intensity, interval jumping jacks, and some
Mhm.
modified burpee type things
Mhm. Oh, I
where I
got out.
don't where I don't go full burpee and stuff. I just use, but it's a modified because in order to the rotation of your and stretching and it's kicked my butt so terrible. But I had to I have to break through, and I've been slowly where I have slightly more energy than I had before, but it's incrementally working its way, and I feel it direction change, but I'm not quite there. Like I'm still a fat
Yeah. Yeah. Well,
fudger. Um,
you're preaching to the choir on that score. But
yeah, but that affects everything.
sure, it
You
does.
know.
And endurance is a major part of it. And
Mhm.
that's how you can tell that you're out of shape is your endurance is reduced, and mine is
Yeah,
reduced big time. I
yeah.
know I'm out of shape, but when Linda had her, she was having back troubles, and this was, I believe, before she had her knee replacement done. The doctor told her, "Look, go down to the pool and swim. Go to the pool and swim. It's resistance, but you're supported and you're weightless. It's low impact." Said that swimming is some of the best exercise that you can get, especially if you are recovering from a physical injury or something like that. You can still exercise, but it's not a high impact thing because when you're in the water, you're basically weightless,
Yeah.
you know,
Just
and
just like the astronauts.
just like the astronauts. But that's what made me go out and buy us a swimming pool that I haven't set up in 2 years. But that's what made me go out and buy a swimming pool, and it did work. She did feel much, much better. Now we've got so much stuff out here, gravel, and that's another story. I don't have room to set it up. That's why I haven't set it up. But hopefully
But
next year.
that's a good exercise too. If I had a pool,
Mhm.
I'd be using it obviously because that's a quicker way to, and you don't have to run around and whatnot.
That and it's
Town.
just that and it's just nice in the summertime to jump in the pool and cool off. I mean, when it's 105 degrees outside and you're sweating like a dog, hop in that pool and just kind of
I've not
hang
done
off
that in so long.
hang off the edge and just, not a care in the world.
I've not done
It's
that in
great.
so long. It's
It,
not even. It's not
and
even funny.
it's getting about the time. In fact, it is the time. It's August. If it's not already over with, this is about the time of year that Walmart closes out. They put all their swimming pools that they have left over from the summer season on clearance and try to get rid of them. I mean, I picked up our pool. It's 14 foot, 15 foot pool. It's 40 something inches deep and 200 and something dollars. Brought it home, set it up, and we were swimming 3 days later after the water warmed up.
We had a pool that my dad bought,
Mhm.
kind of like that, above ground pool
Yeah, that's what
back
we
in
have.
the 80s, and
Mhm.
all the neighborhood kids
Yeah.
would come over and we'd swim. It was so much fun.
Mhm.
My dad kept it up and whatnot, and he sanded the bottom
Mhm.
because it was a liner, the
Mhm.
one that we had.
Mhm.
So I don't know if they're still like that or not, but he added sand to the bottom of where it was placed,
Mhm.
and so it was like a big bag in there that was pressed up against the whatnot.
Yeah, that's what we did. I set a big circle out in the yard that is sand. Of course, right now it's got a mountain of gravel on top of it, so we can't set it up. But yeah,
Yeah, it was so much fun. And I got pictures of it too.
yep,
It's just one of those things.
yep.
Um, it's a great experience. I mean, what a life.
Jim says I got to get some suspenders. I got older and my gut grew bigger when my butt disappeared. Won't hold my pants up anymore. That's why I have two sets of overalls. And I'm talking the farmer overalls with the bib overalls with the straps over the shoulder. That's exactly why. And that's why you see me wearing them in my YouTube videos now, because it's better than watching me pull my drawers up all the time.
Back in the, I'm going to say this. Back in the day, back in the 80s, on TV, used to pop up a commercial that was a infomercial type thing for aerobic exercise, and you see all the ladies dancing and doing the 30-minute workout. Ladies, come on, let's go on this and that. Um, that those same workouts in today's purposes, I would use it for different purposes.
Yeah. Well, you're assuming we didn't back then too, but
I didn't know that those were used for actual exercise.
yeah. Frankie says here, man, that feeling is great in your own little world. Then you hear the pew pew rack and the neighbor yelling, "Get the hell out of my pool! What are you doing?" Yeah, yeah. You're supposed to do that in your pool, Frankie.
The yellow pool water is.
Yeah. So, oh man, yeah, it's a bit too cold. I can see that. Yeah, a little too far north. The furnace runs in June there. Yeah. Well, the furnace that runs in June here is up in the sky, and I'm telling you, it gets downright abusive. You know, we 110 degrees is not uncommon. Now, having said that, we have had a mild summer this year. I think we broke 100 degrees a couple of times, maybe a handful of times. But other than that, it's been in the low to mid 90s, and I'm fine with that. It's okay. I can be outside in that. That 115 degrees crap, that's for the birds.
I
The
have an
only
idea.
the only time I go outside is to get in the pool.
I have an idea for the next episode.
Mhm. What's that?
You set up in your shop. I set up over here in the living room, and we do a jazzercise session.
Do me a favor. Go lay down until that urge passes, okay?
Just listen to this, and we can make it a success because you would go to your local Walmart, I would go to mine, and we would get those fluorescent colored wristbands and head thing and the whole get up, and with spandex, and and it would be side by side comparison, and we'd have to find some elevator music that's pumping so that it's not what do you call it,
Copyright.
copyright. And we say, are you ready, Mark? And it had to be like a little boom box. Everything has to be 80s. Are you ready? Are you ready, Mark? I'm ready. Let's go. And I press the boom box and it starts, go. Come on, guys. Let's move it to the. No, but if we did, okay, in a
You,
surreal.
you are forgetting who you're talking to.
No, but in a weird alternate universe world, if we thought that was a good idea and we did, it would be, at the very least, it would be entertaining to me to see that. Cringy as hell, but it would be funny as hell. Whatever. Skip this.
Thank you. Then I'm glad you got that out of your system.
Mark, see, but you're not picturing. You're not picturing.
Yes, I am. I am
simple.
picturing that. I'm also picturing the next day when I can't get out of bed. No, I believe that spandex is a privilege and not a right. And in fact, I would be in support of legislation that would forbid the making of spandex in anything, any double digit sizes for
if
men or women.
we
And
did,
here's
okay,
a tip for you guys out there. If you're going to the store to buy yourself a bathing suit, go into the fitting room and try that bathing suit on. Then look in that head to toe mirror. If you can't tell what color that bathing suit is from the front, you need a bigger suit. You just need a bigger suit. That's all there is to it.
and I would give you another suggestion. If it don't show crack, then put it back on the rack.
No, if it does show crack, put it back on the rack.
No, I'm
Crack
sorry.
kills. And on that happy note,
Because no, obviously we're joking, but there's some extremes that should be actually that I would, even though I'm quite the libertarian minded person, but there's some extremes that should be banned on pain of death.
yeah. I mean, it's like you're scaring the kids. Stop it. You're scaring the kids. Put on a shirt. You know? And this is coming from a guy that lived in Hawaii. I worked down on Waikiki and I watched the tourists. And it's like, dude, put a shirt on. You're scaring people. Put a shirt on. You're so white we can hear it. You're glowing. Put a shirt on.
And then when they press the boombox button, it starts with the song, "I'm too sexy for my shirt.
Yeah,
too sexy, it hurts." Some things are so bad that they should be banned.
And don't think I'm picking on anybody, but the guys were the number one culprits with that, with forgetting what they actually look like. And it's like, dude, if you're over 200 pounds, you should not even be thinking of the word Speedo. Cover that stuff up. Don't nobody want to see that.
I have to tell you this. When I used to work in the Everglades, I think I've told you this before, but it's worth saying right now. I worked in the Everglades. At the end of the day, I was walking around stuff, and in the front we had picnic tables, and on one picnic table there was a little memory stick.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, somebody left this here. It was too late. I mean, so I said, well, it's a free memory stick because it matched the one. I took it home, and then after I was done with all my stuff at night, I put it in. I say, well, let's clear it out, but let's see if there's anything in there, you know. And I put the little memory stick in, and the photo opens, and it's a dude in a European whatnot. And I was like, oh!
Yeah, that's what I mean. You're scaring the kids. Quit it.
The whole memory stick was full of European bikini guy. It was so I erased it, and obviously, but it never left my mind. It was that horrible.
Well, that's one of those things. I mean, I just went on a rant about men in Speedos. If you're in Europe, at least in Germany, I never looked for a bathing suit in France or Holland or Austria. At least in Germany, if you go to buy a men's bathing suit, that's all you're going to find. There are no others. It's Speedo or nothing.
It makes no sense.
I don't get it. And I'm there in my American bathing suit, which is basically almost basketball shorts. And they're like, well, you're going to put your bathing suit on? This is my bathing suit, homeboy. I believe in covering that crack up. Yeah, it's just like...
So the Europeans are like, you must show more nut.
You Americans are prudes. You Americans are prudes. Yes, we are. Thank you very much.
This is not a bathing suit. You are not revealing nutsack and crack. What is wrong with you?
Really? So,
this is unacceptable. How dare you? This is unacceptable.
Yeah, no thanks.
I mean,
that took a little bit of getting used to, because I mean that was the thing, you know. But it just like,
makes no sense, Mark. Why would you want to squeeze your and then have your butt exposed? Why?
Also, Frankie says also Chewbacca looking folks. Watch what you swim in. Yes. Yes. If people call you Sasquatch, get some work done, homeboy.
Look
Put a
at the
shirt on.
look at the algae drifting. That's not algae. That's Earl.
That's Earl. Yeah.
It's just floating on top of the hair.
Yeah. I'm not gonna say it. You can make up your own mind. All right, we need to land the plane. Now we're just getting goofy.
No, well, because it is a goofy thing. Because from our perspective,
Mhm.
notice that's something I don't. Well, I would bet money that
Mhm.
that's something that in the United States across America. Now, not everybody, but as a general sense,
Mhm.
that guys will, if there's two things hanging on the rack, one is that European show me all, and the other one is a normal like short sort of thing.
Mhm.
That most American people, guys, will go for the regular short things.
It depends on it depends on what you're trying to accomplish with that bathing suit. You know,
Yeah.
if you're out to attract women, maybe. If you've got a six
What?
pack body, if you've got a six pack body, and I can see that.
But it's still
But if
okay.
you've got a 12 pack body, put a shirt on, Earl.
No, but wait a second. You're saying that it
Dude,
it's
if you got it, flaunt it. That's what I'm saying.
yeah, but it's cringy as hell.
Maybe for
Bar none.
you, but what the heck?
It's it's
But
it's
he's not trying to attract you. That's the whole thing. He doesn't care what you and I think.
you
He's not
think
trying to attract
you
us.
think women like that? It's almost
Some
like,
do, dude.
you know what
If I was ripped, and younger in my 20s, you damn skippy, I'd be wearing that.
it never even, those things existed for a long
Mhm.
time, and it never, the idea never crossed me or any of my, but thank goodness, of any of our buddies minds.
Never crossed my mind either, because I didn't know it was a thing. I didn't care. But if knowing now what I didn't know then, if I was 20 years old and buff and ripped and just jacked and had the six pack thing,
You'd be wearing that.
you damn skippy, I would.
But you had to complete the thing, so you'd have to grease your whole body up in the shimmering, what is it, those oil things or whatever, the liquids, and so you'd have to play the full part. But see, that
I,
whole full part, you know what it reminds me of?
dude, I was a swimmer. You use Vaseline. You grease yourself up for for low water resistance.
There you go. But you know what it reminds me of? It's always been cringy to me. I don't understand why. I mean, so it's cringy on the level of a dancing Mick Jagger. In that, in this case, it's almost like, remember that famous actor that used to bronze himself, that he had like he's a very handsome guy, but he was excessively bronzed throughout the 80s,
Oh,
70s and 80s and 90s.
uh, 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 George Hamilton, I think.
George Hamilton, right?
Yeah,
I see it as an extreme like that. Like, yes, you can tan yourself,
yeah,
normal,
yeah.
but he's extreme. The G-string thing for guys is the extreme.
Well,
Normal is just
I was also competing against other guys in my teens.
right.
So, you're going for speed.
Speed O.
Mhm. Yeah, and that's why they called him that,
You're too
because there was
open-minded.
less. Huh?
You're too open-minded. You're
Dude, think about it. You don't think football players wear them pants because they like them, do you?
no, but it's a
No, it's a
purpose.
certain uniform for a purpose, and that's what it was. I mean, it wasn't that I enjoyed the feeling of putting Vaseline all over my body and wearing those little bitty goggles and a Speedo. It wasn't that I liked that. It was that I liked swimming,
Right.
and I was meh at it. Only did it for 1 year, but
It's healthy. It's healthy.
yeah, it was. It was fun, but I wasn't good at it. But I didn't suck either, so it was all right. It was during high school.
I put it in the same category. No, I'm not your specific, because I get it. You had a function within that thing,
Mhm.
but I put the that we're talking about, beaches and the guys walking around,
Mhm.
and then the pop belly, and they've got this little.
Oh yeah.
I put it in the same category, as I said, as a Mick Jagger dancing, as overdone sun tan thing, or as a mullet.
Yeah.
I put all those things in the same category.
Well,
Yeah.
then you'd have loved our first trip to Waikiki Beach, and I'm surprised Linda hasn't mentioned this yet. It was our first trip to Waikiki. We hadn't been in Hawaii for, I don't think, a month yet. And we're out there swimming around, having a good old time. Believe it or not, the water in Savannah, Georgia, in the Atlantic Ocean, was warmer than Hawaii. Hawaii was just a few degrees colder. But that's aside the point. We're out there swimming around and everything, and I turned around and looked back up to shore, and I had to, Linda, quick, look. There was this dude. He was about, oh my God, he must have been 6'4", 6'5". Tall, trim, very slim, flat stomach. And his bathing suit, imagine he had no shirt on and he was wearing flip-flops. His bathing suit, if you want to call it that, was a tobacco pouch on the front with what looked like a leather bootlace going around his abdomen, tied in the back with a feather hanging down.
Oh, jeez.
And he was just strutting, head held high, walking nice and slow, determined look on his face. He just knew he was the stuff, man. He was also about 74 years old, and he was tanned so dark, every hair on that man's body was snow white. He looked like a photo negative. I kid you not. He was tanned dark, but every hair on his body was snow white.
He was a vision.
Oh, it was something to see, all right. And I give Linda and myself a lot of credit for not just dying laughing immediately. We waited until he was out of earshot, and then we started busting up laughing.
And he was confident in his stride.
Oh, he knew he was the stuff, man. He was strutting. He wasn't striding. He was strutting.
Well, if okay, I will say this on his behalf. If he believes it, and unbeknownst to him, everybody else disagrees, that's good for him.
It was flipping hilarious, dude. It was just that juxtaposition. If he'd have had black hair, it'd have been something. But I mean, he had, a poofy curly hair and a mustache and hairy arms and hairy legs. And each and every one of those hairs was snow white. Glow in the dark white.
Well, I think that's a good image to leave our listeners with.
Yeah, that's right.
Because I'm seeing some mixture of a Sasquatch, like a Canadian Sasquatch with the white hair, but yet the undertow. I'm picturing just a whole. But you said skinny, so.
Oh yeah, he was very, very skinny, but he wasn't sickly skinny. You know what I mean? He was in shape. But he was also about 74, 75 years old. Man, it's just, oh my God. And the wrinkles that come with that age, let that sink in. So,
oh, wow.
Yeah. It was not a pretty sight, but you couldn't have told him that. He just knew he was the stuff, man. That was it. And I'm like, Lord, give me that kind of confidence.
Well, that topped it, or at least you kept it all on topic. Because boy, all right. So, well, we'd like to thank you guys, or keep that vision with yourselves for a long time.
Sweet dreams, y'all.
We thank you all for hanging out with us. This is the Trampled Underfoot podcast show. We go live at 9:30 Eastern, 6:30 Pacific Coast time. Here on YouTube, Trampled Underfoot Podcast on YouTube. We have a website, trampledunderfootpodcast.com. You can catch our past episodes by pressing the Wayback Machine button. You can even download those to your podcatcher or device and enjoy them on the go. And we have a Facebook page, and that is Trampled Underfoot Podcast on Facebook, where we post our images and maybe links to things that we talk about during the show. So be sure to check that out as well. And we're also sponsored by
Harneo Media, your web solution. Listen, folks, if you're thinking about establishing or increasing your web presence, look no further than Harneo Media. You need a website, you need a web store, you need to sell merch. You need to talk to Steve. Steve is your man. He will take care of your needs. He's competitively priced, and it's 100% personalized service. When you deal with Harneo Media, you deal with Steve and Steve only. So that's Harneo Media, sponsor of Trampled Underfoot Podcast.com. That's HARNEAL media.com.
All right. Well, we had a good one. It was enjoyable. We went in different little directions, and that last image was a good one to end with. So we'll just say be safe, and we'll catch you next week.
Peace.
See ya.